guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we're cooking for our Plecos. Now, I've been promising you guys for a while that I would give you specifics on feeding the various Plecos that I have in my fish room, and today is the day. Now, I think it is important to mention that I feed a range of things to any of my fish, but something that's important to take into consideration with a lot of Plecos is what they eat in the wild and how they eat it. A lot of them are grazers, especially the Insectivores. They spend a lot of their time searching for food and grazing on surfaces in order to get the nutrition that they need. Because of this, there's a line of products that I really believe in, and this is not sponsored in any way. Repashy Superfoods is the only diet that I know of on the market that does not use any wheat products, any soy, any gluten, any terrestrial meats, any gelatin. They have a proprietary plant and algae based binder. These are powders that you mix with boiling water. They lock in the vitamins so that they don't get dissolved until they're being digested. And they're all made from really excellent whole materials, krill and spirulina. Like this one is krill, black soldier fly larva, mussels, squid, things like that. So it's all ingredients that the fish would actually eat, which I think is really important. So many foods have a ton of stuff that fish just can't digest, and because they can't digest it, what happens? It goes right through. And that's what makes our filters clog up, our water cloudy. Excess stuff in the food is just excess stuff excreted, not usable by the fish, and it makes things messier. And trust me, Plecos poop enough as it is. So what I like to do is feed a range of foods. For my Insectivores, I feed them some of the Soylent Green, which is an off-wax replacement. Off-wax, if you remember correctly, is sort of the algae and microcrustaceans that grow in nature on wood or rock or whatever, and it's what a lot of these grazers eat. I also have some new Plecos downstairs, which are more of a wood eater algae grazer. So I have some morning wood, which is this, that actually has cellulose powder and things like that in it to give the nutrition that the wood eaters get from the wood. I also have an Insectivore premix here, which is geared more towards my high pan citrus, as that's what they eat in nature. And I've gathered together some supplies. I have some of these tiles for my heavily stocked tanks that I can put the gel mix on. I have some pieces of wood to put in my Plecos or my Insectivore aquariums. And I just have a Tupperware to make a mix to have to store in my refrigerator in the fish room to be able to feed as needed. So I'm going to start my water boiling, and then we'll get going cooking for our fish. So what I'm doing here is, as you can hear, my kettle is boiling. With mixing Repashy, you can customize it however you like. So what I've done is I've put mainly Soylent Green in here. Again, that's our off-wax replacer. And then I've put a little bit of the morning wood. And the reason I do that is I like a way firmer gel. It stays put better, it lasts longer. So I've just mixed in some of that. Now, you generally do 1 part powder to 2 to 3 parts water. Again, I like mine a little stiffer. So I am going to add 2 parts water. Now, I will warn you guys, this stuff is quite aromatic, but all you do is mix it up, and then once it's fully mixed, you have the option of applying it to surfaces to feed, or pouring it into a tray or a Tupperware or whatever. Some people use ice cube trays. I will say this stuff does not get stuck to the plastic, so it's really easy to clean up after. And basically, as it cools down, it sets. So I am going to apply some of this, once I get it fully mixed, to my wood pieces, and then pour the rest into a little Tupperware container. Now, it doesn't stick that well to smooth surfaces, which is why I've chosen some pieces of driftwood here. And I just pour it onto the porous sections and let it cool. And again, the rest I'm going to pour into there. Let me grab a spatula. And again, all I'm doing is just pushing it into the bottom of the container in an even way so that when it cools, I can cut it into cubes. Hi, Pepper. Or Mabel. As it starts to set up, you can tell it gets a bit chunky and doesn't want to smooth. So at that point, I just leave it alone. So you can see I've just applied it to these wood pieces, put it in this container, and we'll move on to making another type. I will keep this dirty thing around because I'll just add the already solidified gel stuff to the top of my container. Up next, we are going to make some Insectivore diet. Now, I'm not going to make as much of this because I don't have as much of these fish, so I'm going to make a little container. I'm going to put about 1/8 of a cup of powder. Again, the measurements it doesn't have to be super precise because it doesn't really matter as long as you get a decent consistency that holds together. One other really cool thing about these diets is that you can easily mix in medication should you need to medicate your aquarium. And that's a great delivery method. So this is the Insectivore that I'm making for my high pancistrus. Just trying to make sure it's all stirred up. There's some lumps. Squish them out. This is not for you, Mabel Grace. Does it smell good? My cat thinks this stuff smells fantastic. Pour it into the container, and then we'll let it cool. And that's all there is to it. Up next, I'm going to make a food for my fry. And I'm going to do a mix of Soylent and Spawn and Grow with a little bit of Morning Wood. And this will be for my young Pinoculus as well as my rams and really a whole bunch of fish in the fish room. Now, Repashy stays good in the refrigerator for at least 2 weeks or in the freezer for several months. So I'm going to do the 1/2 cup of boiling water. Oh, I'm making a mess. Some of that. Some of that. And a little bit of this. And it is pungent in here right now. So I've been using this diet now for quite a few years. It's really pretty fantastic. Mabel, this is not for you. Mabel, my cat, is probably one of the first things in my kitchen with me. People will say that isn't absolutely disgusted by the smell of cooking Repashy. But that's part of the reason the fish love it, because it's using actual real ingredients that they would eat. It's definitely aromatic. So we will let these things cool down and then I'll show you how the fish respond. Now, as this stuff cools down, I just wanted to talk for a minute about storing the powders. You can keep them really anywhere, but you will extend the longevity of them if you refrigerate them. They don't have to be refrigerated. They're in completely opaque containers that, you know, preserve the vitamins and stuff, but I like to keep them in the refrigerator just so that there's no degradation. I mean, my fish room's really, really warm. My family doesn't appreciate them in the kitchen, So I tend to store them in my refrigerator. The same thing with the foods. It lasts for 2 weeks in the refrigerator or for several months in the freezer. Now, if you're going to freeze it, you would want to make sure the cubes are separated when you freeze them. Otherwise, they tend to stick together. So let's see how easy this stuff is to work with. I generally cut it into little tiny squares. You can always add more, but you can't take it away. What's nice about this stuff is it doesn't fungus or fall apart in the water super fast. So it can stay stable for a couple of days, which is great for feeding fry and for these grazers. You know, a lot of the fish, we feed them like they're binge eating. That, you know, it's as much as they can eat in a short amount of time. When the reality is a lot of fish, especially the little guys, sort of pick and feed constantly. So it's nice to be able to deliver food to them in a way that won't foul up our tank, but it gives them a way to sort of eat a little more naturally. You can see how easily that stuff comes off the plastic. Now I'll just wait for this to cool, and then we can feed the fish. But this is my Soylent Green, so what I'll do is I'll take a piece of tape, put it on the lid, mark it with the date and what this diet is so that I know once it's in the refrigerator, and I'll do the same with the others. And then that way I know when if I haven't used it all, when it's time to toss it or feed it, and also what I'm feeding to each fish. So what I've done is I've gone around the fish room and dropped in some of the Repashy foods that in the aquariums that I specifically like to use for them. This tank has Otocinclus, and as you can see, about 1 million Amano shrimp, both of which are algae grazers. And as you can see, both the Amanos and the Otocinclus go right to it. It's literally been seconds since I dropped it in here. Now the Otos sometimes take a little longer, but that's mainly because the Amano shrimp are just such absolute pigs. So what I'll do in a case like this is I'll drop the food into several parts of the aquarium so that everybody can get some. And again, as you can see, I just literally drop some cubes in there. And we'll see how long it takes for critters to discover it. And as you can see from this cube here, it took literally seconds. And again, what's really, really nice about the diet is it does stay very much together in its clumps, and it lasts for a long time in the water so that these grazers that move a little slower will be able to eat well. Let's take a look in some of the other Pleco tanks. I dropped one of the pieces of wood in here with my high Pancistrus Contridens and these Ancistrus, and immediately everybody went to graze. The high Pancistrus hasn't quite figured out where it is yet, but he will. But immediately upon adding it to the aquarium, everybody gets super excited. With the grazers like the Ancistrus and Otocinclus, they have super long digestive tracts meant for breaking down tough things like cellulose and fibers that otherwise most fish cannot digest. So having this delivery method of applying it on wood is really fantastic for them. Oh look, the high pans are starting to figure it out. We'll come back to this aquarium in a few minutes. Let's check out the Super Reds. Now this stick of food didn't want to sink. This was a dry piece of wood I collected. Normally I just go around to my various aquariums and collect pre-soaked wood to apply the gel to. This one I had to put a small rock here to hold it down. But as you can see, there are Plecos all over it. Look at that big male. Isn't he gorgeous? And they are just going nuts for it. Everybody's trying to get a piece. So because this stuff is long lasting in the water, fish can eat, go on their way, other fish can eat, and it's really, really great, especially for fry who need to eat so frequently. But you can see how much these guys are absolutely loving this. And again, I just poured the Soylent Green onto the wood, let it set, and dropped it in the aquarium. As you can see, it's staying put. It's not falling off the wood. It's not blowing away into the water column. It's not making a huge mess of the aquarium, which is really, really nice. And that's one of the reasons I also particularly like this diet. It holds together really, really well. Look how excited everybody is at the smell of this stuff in the water. And it's important to mention as well that your tetras and various other fishes will also eat this stuff. Sometimes it can take them a little bit longer to figure out where it is in the aquarium, but you can stand up pieces of wood like this to go throughout the entire water column, and that really allows for fish who graze at all surfaces to eat it. Let's look in the tank below. So down in this aquarium, which again is my longfin standard ancistrus aquarium, it also has some wild bee shrimp, and it has those really, really cool rainbows, and you can see that everybody is grazing at once. You might be wondering, where are the big longfin ancistrus? Well, because we have them set up properly and are feeding them properly, this big guy is actually on eggs. I'm kind of hoping he's going to back out a little bit so I can show you guys the eggs, but feed them properly, nice clean water, and give them appropriate structures, and they will breed, and proof is in the pudding here. As you can see, he is on eggs. He'll stay with them constantly, fanning his fins like that to make sure they don't fungus until they hatch. Now, he probably trapped the female in this cave where she laid her eggs, he fertilized them, and then he kicks her out. But as you can see, this really does work. Pretty cool, huh? I'll see if I can't keep documenting this for you guys. Oh, he got nervous, so I went in back to cover them up. Now, I had mentioned that I really like this food for fry because they can pick at it constantly. Here you can see my ram fry are absolutely taking to it and just eating it constantly. And this way they'll be able to graze all throughout the day, making sure they're getting the nutrition that they need for good growth. When I feed Repashy, these guys' growth is way better than when I feed them dried foods. I do also give them baby brine, but I use Repashy quite a lot for these guys. Now this one has some spawn and grow, which is a growth diet in it. As you guys know, my 150 has a lot of really unique and specialized fish in it, many of which are off-flux grazers, like the gastromyzons and pseudogastromyzons we see here. And it can be a really unique challenge to feed them properly. As you can see, they readily go to this Repashy superfood. And that's part of the reason they're in such excellent condition and coloration. I mean, those pseudogastromyzons, the yellow dudes right there, are freaking phenomenal. Fat and happy. And as you can see, the schooling fish in the aquarium also have absolutely no problem eating the food off the bottom of the aquarium. This diet was game-changing for me for working with hill stream species and off-flux grazers, because it really is one of the few truly complete diets that these guys will eat and absolutely thrive on. Let's check out another aquarium. Down here I fed it to Habrosus cories, and you can see they obviously love it. A lot of these foods are really, really useful for conditioning fish to spawn because they put on weight and they have a lot of really great nutrition. Here we can see the bumblebee gobies readily eating it, which is fantastic. And again, if you got in fish and you need to be able to deworm them or something, adding the dewormer to the food is the absolute best way to deliver the medications. So Repashy's fantastic for this. These fire eye loaches are notoriously shy, but even they come out of the woodwork from everywhere to be able to feed. Absolutely love it. And you really get to see how super cool this fish is. I'll be doing a spotlight on these once I get past my catfish month. So one of the unique obstacles of breeding fish is really maintaining that water quality and keeping things super clean, especially while raising fry or young shrimp or snails or anything. And utilizing gel foods like this is a great way to keep the food from falling apart, going into the substrate, and causing secondary pests. Pretty much anything will eat it unless they have a super high prey drive, and it's just fantastic because it doesn't make a mess. And the quality of the ingredients is just so good. You can see these guys obviously love it. So similar to when I use the O-nip that sticks to the glass, that diet's made by Sarah, this also gets everybody to come out and look around so you can get a good look at your fish to see how they're doing, get a count, things like that. Getting a count on how many fish you have, or seeing some things like these cobitus loaches right here, can be really, really difficult because they're so elusive and shy. However, they definitely come out of the woodwork when feeding something as stinky as Repashy. Now, as always, I don't ever recommend just one type of food to feed. Repashy is one of several things that I feed in my fish room. However, if you listen to any of the big Pleco or catfish breeders, the vast majority of them are utilizing these diets in order to get their fish into spawning condition as well as to raise the fry. And there's a reason for that. The quality of ingredients is absolutely fantastic. You may be saying to yourself that you don't want to cook for your fish, but I do this, you know, once a month or every few weeks and mix it in the rotation in my fish room, and it's really paying off. It's sort of a secret weapon with keeping a lot of these more difficult fish. You can see even the Rhinogobius, this guy, who's very prey driven, is out trying to get this food. So it really is very palatable. And these diets are super easy to customize. I do believe they are available in just about any country. You can buy them through RepashySuperfoods.com as well as many, many, many vendors. I don't personally sell it anymore, though I used to. I hope this helps. You know, as always, keep your tanks clean, feed a really good quality food with no terrestrial grains. If you feed the fish food that they're supposed to be eating, you will be rewarded in dividends. And often you guys ask me, you know, how do I get my fish to breed? Why do they look so good? And it's really, a lot of it has to do with feeding. So the couple of minutes it takes me to cook for my fish once a month is totally worth it to get the results that I do. And that few minutes of time I find really saves me a lot of time, because again, I'll store the food in the refrigerator. All I have to do is grab it out and drop it in the aquariums. It's a great way for me to get inventory, see how they're doing, medicate wild fish, as well as ensure that they're going into spawning condition. Thanks as always for your guys' continued support. I can't tell you how much your donations, comments, and emails mean to me. Make sure you stop by my Instagram and my Facebook, as well as my website, MsJinx.com, where you can see my upcoming speaking engagements, my current stock list, and information on all things nano. Now, Catfish Month is almost over. I have a few more things to show you, and then we'll move back onto more typical programming for my channel. Let me know below what you guys would like to see next.